It's my honor to introduce our next speaker, City Controller Chris Hollins from the City of Houston. I know, right? I must admit that I'm proud that HAR board decided to get more involved with the Controller's office during my tenure as chair because it's such a critical role in the city's economic future. As the independently elected chief financial officer of the nation's fourth largest city, Chris provides oversight of a budget exceeding $6 billion and manages the city's $6 billion investment and $14 billion in debt portfolios. Prior to his service as the city controller, Chris led the 2020 election efforts in Harris County as the county clerk. He gained national acclaim for protecting and expanding voter rights for 2.5 million Houston area voters during one of the most important elections of our lifetime. Today, we will hear about the financial impact of the housing of our community and what the city is doing to help now and in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Houston City Controller and my friend, Chris Hollins.
Good afternoon. All right, we can do a little bit better than that. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. Thomas, thank you so much for that warm introduction and for your leadership of HAR this year. And thanks to each of you here for inviting me to speak with you today on such an important topic for our city. Now, I look around this room and I see a lot of familiar faces. But for those of you who I've yet to meet, again, my name is Chris Hollins, and I have the privilege of serving as your city controller. And as the City of Houston's chief financial officer, it's my job to ensure that the investment that you're making in our city through your tax dollars is paying a dividend back into your life and into your family's lives and into your neighborhood. I have a number of important duties as your city controller, but none of them is more critical than serving as the financial watchdog for our residents. If your city government is spending taxpayer dollars wisely and delivering services efficiently and effectively, then Houstonians will reap the benefits both now and in the future. But if city officials are too lax about how they spend your hard-earned dollars, if city operations are not fiscally sustainable, or if City Hall is operating in a way that violates the will of the voters, then I'm going to have a problem with that, and I'm going to have an obligation to speak out about it. I haven't hesitated to speak the truth about matters of importance to Houstonians, even if that happens to upset the apple cart downtown. And while as a business person and as a man of faith, I prefer a kind and diplomatic approach, I want to be clear. I'm not at City Hall to make friends. I'm not down there to go along to get along. There's too much at stake. My commitment is to represent you, to represent your families, and that means a laser focus on accountability, transparency, and innovation in how we approach the biggest challenges that we face as a city. Now, one of those challenges, in fact, one of the largest of those challenges, is housing. Houston is not unique among major cities in facing a housing shortage that is driving up the cost of living and making it tougher for regular folks to live affordably. Every city that's growing across this nation is in a similar boat, and housing has become a major issue across America. In fact, nearly half of renters across the U.S. spend more than 30% of their incomes on housing alone. That figure is roughly the same in Houston. And while homeowners have it a little bit better, with only a quarter of homeowners spending more than 30% of their income on housing, that's still a big number. And for a household where so much of your paycheck is gone before you can even start to think about groceries or filling up your gas tank, it's no wonder that so many are feeling the economic strain even as wages have increased over the past few years. In fact, NBC News analysis of last week's election found that the biggest shifts toward Donald Trump since 2020 took place in the counties where it was most difficult to afford to buy a home. And so again, what we're seeing here in Houston looks a lot like what's happening across America. The need for greater availability of affordable housing in Houston and Harris County was recently illustrated in a report by Rice University's Kinder Institute. The report's key finding included the fact that homeownership in Houston has become increasingly expensive. In 2023, the median home price across Houston was $335,000, and residents' buying power is not keeping up with that increase in prices. In fact, since 2018, the affordability gap in Houston has grown by 54%. It's now to the point where in Harris County, a majority of all neighborhoods are not considered affordable to a household that's making $100,000. And while homeowner households have increased, there's been an alarming decline in homeownership by Black families. In 2022, there were fewer African American homeowners in Houston than in 2010. And in the South Park and Trinity Houston Gardens neighborhoods alone, there were over 1,000 fewer households owned by Black families. Now, thankfully, there's also some positive news to report. Just last week, you all at HAR released a report that showed that 38% of Houston area households can afford to purchase a medium price home. And that might not sound like a lot, but it's up from 35% at this time last year. And that's the first year-over-year improvement since 2020. Interest rates are down a full percentage point, and a Houston resident now making around $98,000 can afford to buy a medium price home. Last year, that same home could only be purchased by someone making $104,000. So there is something to celebrate. That is good news. But what remains the biggest issue in housing facing Houston, as the fourth largest city in the United States, is simply the scale of the affordability problem that we face. The most recent data available found that Houston area is short more than 100,000 affordable units. That's a lot. And in many ways, we're not equipped to deal with the challenge of that magnitude, despite significant effort. Like many urban centers, the tools that we have at our disposal for housing oftentimes come to us via support from the federal government. In fact, when we think about the efforts of the City of Houston's Housing Department, easily more than 80% of the funding for those programs comes from the feds. Those include community development block grants, low-income housing tax credits, rental assistance programs, public housing operating fund and capital funds, and qualified opportunity zone designations. And so a lot, again, comes from the federal government. And you may have heard, but there's a change of leadership taking place at the federal level. To put it lightly, we haven't heard much about housing policy from the incoming administration. So what can we expect? The Bipartisan Policy Center attempted to analyze incoming President Trump's plan for housing, or maybe what we might call his concept of a plan. And they reported that it's primarily focused on boosting the available supply. Proposals include freeing up federal lands for building, easing regulations, offering tax incentives to first-time homebuyers. There's also a proposal to reduce immigration and increase deportations to free up available housing. Now, look, on that, I don't know what to tell you. But we're obviously going to have to see how these details play out, and it looks to me that folks in this city are going to be turning more and more to local government to fill that gap in housing. And so what has the city of Houston been up to? Well, a few things. Our single-family home repair program allows for the rehabilitation of existing housing stock, which is critical to keeping homeownership affordable. The city's Affordable Home Development Program provides funding to for-profit and nonprofit developers alike to make homes attainable to Houston residents, those earning up to 120% of area median income. In late February of this year, our city council, and I see, where's Councilmember Ramirez? Are you here? Let's thank him for his service. Can we give him a round of applause? In late February, City Council gave unanimous approval to 17 affordable housing proposals. Those proposals accounted for 1,560 new affordable housing units and 209 renovations of existing units. The Houston Land Bank, funded by the city, has a mission to strategically acquire and steward vacant and abandoned properties into productive use with a significant focus on housing. And the Land Bank touts its efforts to create over 500 affordable homes in the last 20 years. But now, what I've described is not all that's taken place, but let's just look at these numbers for a second. 1,500 units, 200 units, 500 units. These are all well and good until you think about that first number I told you, which is that we still have more than 100,000 units to go. And we truly appreciate all of the efforts that are underway by government, by nonprofit agencies like Habitat for Humanity, and for-profit entities to address this major challenge. But our vision and our aspiration have to match the scale of the problem that we're facing. If not, then what are we doing? So one thing that we can do is look to what's happened in other cities, the success stories that they've had. They provide us new ideas and options that could work here in Houston. So let's take the city of Atlanta. And before I dive into this, I have to tell y'all, so I went to college in Atlanta. I went to Morehouse College. I have a lot of good friends who are Atlantans, but they think very highly of themselves. And so I hate to give Atlanta props. But in this instance, we have to give credit where it's due. So in this small, tiny, second-rate town of Atlanta, Mayor Andre Dickens and his team saw a similar problem to the one that we have here. And they set the ambitious goal of building or preserving 20,000 units of affordable housing citywide by 2030. To help move that effort forward, Atlanta is leveraging $300 million in public and private investment. And this is the first time in Atlanta's history that the city has come even close to investing that much in affordable housing at one time. $100 million of those dollars are coming from private foundations in partnership with the Community Foundation of Greater Atlanta, and another $100 million came from the Housing Opportunity Bond. These bond proceeds are going to be part of the capital structure of major deals, which are then going to be paid back to the city by developers and reinvested in new big projects. And to put the weight of city government behind the effort, Mayor Dickens created an affordable housing strike force to coordinate and prioritize these affordable housing projects. Atlanta's making real progress, with more than 3,000 affordable housing units generated since 2022 alone, and another 5,000 currently in the works. We should give them a round of applause. Now, if you think I got a problem with Atlanta and the Atlanta Falcons fans, I really have a problem with Spurs fans. But San Antonio is also doing something special when it comes to affordable housing. In 2022, San Antonio created an affordable housing bond, and they put it before the voters, and it passed with a lion's share of votes. San Antonio now has $150 million to improve affordable housing in 5 funding categories. Approved funding will help develop safe, quality, and affordable housing near jobs, transit, schools, and services, just like we need here in Houston. This includes $45 million to help homeowners fix their homes, $40 million to rehabilitate rental housing, another $40 million to build additional affordable homes, and finally $25 million to connect the unhoused to resources that will help them get a permanent roof over their heads. Beyond these examples, I believe that there are several things that local government should be doing and can be doing to support affordable housing. And I discussed these ideas with HAR and your leadership when I was running for office. Allowing local taxing entities to offer flat dollar homestead exemptions, like the recently passed school property tax homestead exemption, to provide relief to middle-class homeowners. Reforming the appraisal review process to make it fair for middle-class homeowners, including by removing the advantages that owners of large properties have and that owners who can afford expensive litigation have. Establishing a Texas low-income housing tax credit program. And modernizing regulations to incentivize housing affordability in urban areas. One of the other options I discussed with HAR was how to redirect TERS dollars toward affordable housing and to ensure a set-aside for a small but meaningful number of affordable units within Class A developments. Now, we got to talk about flooding. Our city and our region continue to be hit hard in recent years, and the impact of storm damage has been too much for many low and moderate income residents to bear. So flood mitigation can be a very important tool in this process. But also, when storms hit, getting our fair share of recovery dollars from state and federal entities is critical. Just last year, in the November elections, Houstonians voted in record numbers for Proposition B. And Proposition B would give Houston proportional representation within the local council of governments that allocates those recovery funds when they come in. However, the city has yet to make good on Prop B and is currently operating in violation of the city charter by not pursuing proportional representation. And I've been very vocal on that point. But to bring it back home, if government plays an active role in limiting the number of homes that are impacted by floods and severe weather, fewer Houstonians will have to relinquish their dream of homeownership. We can also work to make the permitting process and other government regulations more efficient, more reasonable, and more practical so that we can attract the kind of investment that will expand access to affordable housing versus chasing those investors away. With the way that the world has changed since the pandemic, we can also double down on the effort to convert vacant office buildings into residential housing. The Downtown Housing Initiative has already created more than 4,000 housing units, but now the focus has to turn to making those units more affordable. Now, one of the most compelling reasons why we need to build affordable housing here in the Bayou City is that by keeping a roof over people's heads, we're giving them an opportunity to build something for themselves. I grew up in a large household. My dad was a Houston police officer, and my mom was an administrative assistant. Neither of them had a college degree, but they worked hard to build something for our family. And in addition to my parents raising my two sisters and me and giving us the strongest foundation that they could provide, they also opened the doors of our home to more than 20 foster children. And because those kids had a loving family and a roof over their heads, they could pursue things in life that might not have been possible if they didn't have a safe place to live. And today, those kids have grown up, and many of them are building families for themselves. So I know firsthand just how important it is to have a safe, welcoming home to go to at night. And I know that it makes me appreciate the importance of an organization like HAR and the role that you play, each and every one of you, in the life of our city and our residents. With you, it goes well beyond selling properties and making commissions. It's about building communities and providing generations of Houstonians with a place to call home. And so I want to thank you all for making such a big difference in so many lives. And I want to thank you again for allowing me to spend some time with you here today. God bless you.